Race drivers, we've got another interview. This one's really interesting because it's a sports psychologist by the name of Oran O'Kelly, and he's actually competed. So we can talk about the psychology side of competing, obviously the mindset needed and how he went about competing himself, and sponsorship. Two main areas that we talk about and two things that I know you really are hungry to find out more about. So sit back and enjoy. So to start with, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much for having me on, Enzo. As we discussed before, I'll get to the mind section, but I think more relevant and more important, how I found out about you through a fellow race driver. But one of the most enormous pieces of my racing history as an athlete, you helped me with before I even got to meet you. So we'll touch on that as well. But just to give everyone a bit of an introduction to myself, my name's Oran O'Kelly. I'm originally from Ireland, and I've got sort of a unique collaboration of experiences as a qualified performance psychologist, but also I've competed as a professional athlete in motorsport, off-road motorsport specifically. I'm sure some people have heard of the Dakar Rally, but I had the privilege of competing this year in the motorcycle category, which I spent about 3.5, 4 years preparing for, which really is the pinnacle of off-road motorsport or off-road endurance motorsport specifically. And I kind of did that, probably some would look at it maybe in unusual ways, because I actually qualified as a sports and performance psychologist, and then I had the opportunity to compete. So I went into that with a very unusual skill set and lens to look at it and experience it as a competitor. And now I have the privilege of bringing that experience and bringing that knowledge into my practice, supporting athletes, but more specifically motorsport athletes on some of the challenges I faced, some of the unique situations, and there's an enormous amount of key takeaways from it. So I'll just touch on a few with you here today. But before we get stuck into that, I just want to say, Enzo, as we discussed before, experiencing the event as an athlete was one thing, but preparing for the event, specifically motorsport, it was my first time fundraising, getting sponsorships together. So I did my research on how to raise money and how to the business end of the motorsport section, which you provided an enormous amount of value from. Your book, Get the Drive, was like a Bible for me.
It's nice to hear that, because it takes so much work to put a book together. And when you're a bit of a perfectionist, you wouldn't know that reading it because there's so many spelling mistakes. But when you're a perfectionist, it takes a long time because you think, I've got this one chance to get everything in this book. And you know you're going to think of things afterwards, but still you want to put it all in. So it's good to hear that it actually helps.
Incredible. Completely changed my whole perspective on what sponsorship was, what I was selling, how to get people to buy into it. And a lot of it is really interesting. But as you stated multiple times, like just from getting the statistics in order to sell to really fine-tuning a boardroom sales pitch. These were all ideas, but it allowed me to really take action on these ideas and put them into mediums where I could deliver value to my potential sponsors. And a lot of it encouraged me as well. Like, it was motivation, finding motivation in that process was enormously challenging. Like we discussed before, some of the statistics or some of the numbers, I managed to achieve 18 partnerships or sponsorships for the Dakar Rally. And that took 100 or 1,500 different companies to approach, to pitch, to qualify, and to understand. So if we talk about statistics, that I think is just under 2% success rate.
I love it. I love it. So we're going to have quite a good conversation, because obviously I've come to this thinking we're going to talk about mental performance, but man, let's go into sponsorship as well first, because obviously they're the two big prongs, right? So talk us through the journey. So you had an idea to go and do Dakar. Obviously it was a big goal. Where did you, what's the process, and what did you offer the sponsors? Literally give someone like a 101 of this is how I did it.
I took an approach. I think before I read the book, I understood about raising awareness and about raising my personal racing profile. So I took it as an opportunity to begin contacting journalists, begin trying to make make the opportunity more valuable to a potential sponsor. Initially, I looked at it when I first thought of it. Okay, I'm selling this few square inches on the car, or for me, in that case, on the bike or on my helmet or somewhere else. And that really is bottom of the priority list. a lot of the sponsors and through your reading and other research in the area realize that it needs to have a story. And every one of us, as an athlete, as a practitioner, and now someone in a support role supporting us, everyone has a story, and understanding that narrative and going to a brand and selling them your story or sharing with them your story and trying to find alignment between, I think, your story of what you're doing or what you're planning on getting done,
Yep.
and what their brand is and what their story is. If you can find an alignment between those two, and the brand can buy into it and the brand can promote their story through your story, and if there's synergy, I think that's really where you get traction from it. But back to stats and back to business, raising a profile, raising awareness about the situation that you're doing is of the highest priority.
I like it because I was thinking about Liam Lawson now. He had, obviously, beneath the story that people don't know is that he had a janitor working for free, right? Totally free.
Touching that point. Yeah.
Because he saw potential in Liam. He was fast, you know, he looked like a kid he had a lot of heart, a lot of desire to get to F1 or become a professional driver back then. And he won their scholarship, and Grant McDonald, his name is. And he said that this kid is worth my money. You know, that's what the sort of evaluation he came, worth my money. Worth my time. This kid's worth my time. So he put in the work, found lots of little investors saying this kid's going to go to Europe and compete to go to F1. And people bought into that. And it actually happened. So the story of him just being a humble kid with a normal background, but having this talent, and we need to showcase this guy from New Zealand, and he can go across the water to fight for us. It got everyone on board, and he had so many investors, and they've raised so much money as well. So it was the story, and honestly, some of them don't even want a sticker on the car, let alone return on investment. Some of them, they just want to be a part of it.
I think it's about, you can have the skill, you can have the lap times, you can have the talent, but if that can't be translated and communicated into a boardroom setting or into a business setting or into a context, it's probably just a little bit better than useless, because you're not going to get the momentum, you're not going to get development, you're not going to get the funding, you're not going to get the backing that you need to raise through the ranks or raise through the profile of it. I think Scott Dixon might have been involved with that gender as well, or there might have been some connection between the two.
Yes. So some of the investors that put money into Scott also, because I suppose he's got the same sort of story, back to Liam as well. So yeah.
So if we take that as a case study, what that gender did was take an amazing, talented athlete as a driver and begin that process of finding funding and finding his story and relating it to businesses that could buy in, and companies were obviously so bought into it that they didn't even see the need to have branding or prime precious real estate on the car.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, there's two ways of going out. If you've got a really big profile, it's a little bit easier, right? Thinking of like Ollie Behrman now, because he's got such a big social media following and a good buzz around him.
Yeah.
Everyone can see he's on his way. Even like 2 years ago, it was not easy to get sponsorship, but a lot of sponsors did line up and say, yeah, we want to be a part of that. So I think it is, again, the journey. So, okay. So you had the story of, was it just a case of, I want to go and do Dakar? Was that the story, or was it more?
Yeah. It sort of, to be honest with you, was a childhood itch. I raced motocross growing up till I was 12 years old. Then went to secondary school and was no longer able to continue racing. And it was something that I hadn't done in about 15 years. And I had the opportunity to pick it up again in my later 20s and just went all in on it. Took a lot of what I learned from sports science and studying performance psychology into the implementation, into the training, which I'll touch on later, about skill acquisition and this myth of needing 10,000 hours of expertise has enormously been debunked in many ways. If you can look at it something specifically, and which we can probably go in on for an hour as well. But retrospectively, reverse engineering that and understanding, okay, where are the biggest opportunities for me from a physical standpoint, from a mechanical standpoint with the bike, but also from a mental preparation standpoint. How can I put myself in the best possible position to reach world championship standards with the limited time that I had at that period? And then on top of that as well, none of that could have happened without the fundraising,
Yeah.
without the acquisition of sponsors and acquisition of partnerships as well.
You got any good stories like when you went to, like, failures maybe when you went to
Yeah,
get sponsorship and then landed flat on your face?
could go on for at least a full hour, but I'll give you some of the highlight reels. And this Enzo just gives you an idea about raising awareness and publicity. When I first sat on it, I thought, okay, if a brand or sponsor is going to want to get involved with me, first thing you're going to do is Google me. At that time, I didn't have a big following on social media. I wasn't really promoting my story or promoting my activities or what I was doing. So I thought, okay, first opportunity here is to contact the press. I made a list of all the sports journalists, all the motorsports journalists, fine-tuned my story, fine-tuned my background, and more importantly, what I was going to do, take on this mammoth task of the Dakar Rally, which I'll describe a little bit later on as well, just the Everest that it is. And I think I made a list of about 30 of them that I thought, okay, these guys are probably looking for a story to write about. They might have a slow week where they might be able to slot me in to put me into an article. And I broached around 30 of them. And to be honest, none of them got back to me. So then I looked at it from a different angle as well. And I had an introduction to Charlie Borman, who I'm sure you may have heard of, famous or very popular in the off-road motorsport scene, and had an opportunity to get an introduction to him. So begged for that and pleaded and managed to get the intro through a friend of a friend of a friend, and connected with him. And he was very charitable with his time and advice and guidance, but also offered to do an event with me. And once I kind of piggybacked off him a little bit and had him behind me, and I got him invested in my story, he promoted me hugely, and he very kindly offered to come over and do an event in Dublin. And I'm not in show business. I'm not in event management. We managed to sell out a theater of over 500 people doing an introduction to Charlie Borman, as me as the side act, if you will, or the warm-up act, which enormously raised my profile in my industry and in Ireland and in the UK, because people bought into his story, people bought into my story, and all of those journalists came flying back to me. Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. Yeah, the number of them, I think almost all of them got back to me and say, hey, sorry, this email slipped my mind or slipped away.
It does. I mean, in my business, same thing. You get all these messages and you try and get back to them. And you don't, obviously not all of them. But some you read like, oh, right, I'll get back to that when I get back home, and you never do. And then they catch you about a year later. Oh, you ignored me. Oh, sorry. So I can imagine just with my small business, it's the same.
Yeah.
With media businesses, if we're talking about businesses now and sponsorships, same thing. So it's kind of like you got to just go again. And go different.
That's the follow-up. Come at them with something new. And another sort of story or failure, if you will, which was turned into a success, was I managed to partner with, I believe, the world's leading or definitely the biggest in my industry tire manufacturer. I won't say the name, but I found the contact. I found the right person who was the decision maker, which I learned through your book as well. Like just finding the right person.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking to someone in marketing or speaking to someone in distribution at a tire manufacturer is just a waste of your time and a waste of their time. I found who I thought might be the decision maker, managed to get their email from a website online. I think I emailed them 7 or 8 times, coming out to them with different ideas. Hey, we're doing this event. Hey, I have this opportunity. Hey, I'd love to catch you on a call. Hey, this is a piece of media about me. So trying to raise my value. And then I think the 7th one or 8th one was an automatic response, saying that they were out of office away on holiday. And that actually came up with a +44 number.
Oh, gotcha.
So I thought, you know what? Let's plug that number into WhatsApp. Let's see what happens. Drop them a line on WhatsApp, and within a minute, they'd replied to me. Hey, Oran, saw your emails. Love the story. Sorry, I've been completely at capacity. Haven't had a chance to reply to you yet. And got back to me. We set up a call the next week. Went back and forth a little bit, negotiating a contract, negotiating my deliverables, and had a huge cost for my Dakar budget. I'm completely relieved, which was unbelievable.
There's loads of lessons. There's 2 that really stick out to me, and that one is, one email and just leaving it and say, I've tried enough now, which a lot of drivers do, obviously. A lot of people do. We have all done it, right? You send it, didn't get it there. So I think that persistence it can break down walls, because I get these emails, you do as well, and it's like, do you want an app built? Or do you want your website built? Or your social media is not working very well, I can help you. And you just ignore them because you know it's just somebody, you don't know if it's a real person. So you kind of just easily ignore it, and it's just noise, right?
With those emails, you can definitely read it if that email has been mass marketed to you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say, hey, Enzo, or just says, dear.
Copy paste.
I think putting a tiny bit of personalization in it helps enormously.
It does. In fact, somebody showed me the other day, this is, they've got like my video, YouTube, the views it's got, and they've put this system on it where it shows you the interaction and how it could be optimized. And he was showing me all this just on screenshots. And he sent that to me, and it caught me. I haven't done anything about it, but that person has actually emailed 3 times. And like, this is quite, I'm still not going to buy from you because I'm not interested. Yeah. However, it's in my head now, and I'm talking to you about it, and people are listening. So he's doing something right. He's got his personal name at the top. He's actually shown a screenshot of a recent video as well. So I'm like, you've done your research. And I think when someone does that, and if he was to do it, hopefully he's not listening to this. If he did it like 4 or 5 more times, I might break it, give in, and like, okay, I'll give you a shot. So I think it's a case of also keep hitting, and then they sit each one you hit, and if you hit a good nerve, and it's like, yeah, I want that, and you keep doing it, eventually they'll probably like, I'm going to throw you a bone.
Yeah.
Or listen to you, whichever.
Yeah. Or give you a few minutes of your time. Like that. If you were a young upcoming karting driver and I was in charge of a big multinational transport company, and you'd email me 3 or 4 times, and I'd seen a bit of media about you somewhere, and I'd seen a bit of press about you, that's going to register in my head as, I'm familiar with that. I need to get in touch with him. I've seen him here. I've seen him there. There's an opportunity there.
Going out there, outside your comfort zone, surely, to put on an event for 500 people and to have the balls to actually do that. Oh my God, mate. It's ridiculous. And it actually came off. It could have, even if it didn't, it still would have been an experience. And that's another thing that drivers must do. It can't be just, I'm sending Coca-Cola an email from my bedroom and that's it. It's probably way more louder than that. And
I think, Enzo, at that time, I had a budget in total of almost €140,000. And working towards that budget, I probably had less than 10% of it from small sponsors. All that money went back in for that event, to rent the theater, to get engaged with the PR and the media company to help sell tickets. So I reinvested all that money and was probably at zero or close to zero, thinking it's all in on red here.
Oh man,
try and make this
so cool. That's business, right? You reinvest, you don't spend it. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard drivers, they'll get that 14K, whatever it is, spend it on a test. It's gone. They've just done 4 sessions at, well, not 14K because that's a bit expensive, but say if it was 5K, they've got 4 sessions at Silverstone, 45 minutes. The money's gone. Like, what have you got to show for that? Oh, the team want to offer me a drive. Yeah, how much for? 200 grand. Congratulations. They would have offered you that without the test. So it is that, I think the business school for race drivers, well, there isn't one really, but it needs to be invented, because I think if drivers just go to business school or just learn the entrepreneur skills needed, or study people that have built businesses, they can adjust it and apply it to their own career, because it's all business, right? Like you just said, it's marketing as well.
Yeah, huge amount of it. And I firmly believe, someone will prove me wrong maybe, but to get there with just pure talent and ability today, it's no longer possible in this world of media and social media and businesses and budgets. It's impossible, or almost impossible.
Yeah, it is. You got to play the business game, right? So that's good. So anything else more on the sponsorship side we should cover from your journey that's good? It could be interesting.
I think if someone's doing a race season, it might be a little bit different. I was just focusing on doing 2 rounds of the World Championship this year out of 6 for my specific. I've also got a career as a performance psychologist that I need to stay focused on and have a service and support to deliver. But post-event or post-season thank yous, deliverables, going through them with presentations, going through them with media presentations, giving them their return on investment in consumable figures, in business terms of reach, awareness, collecting all the media you did, presenting it back to them and trying to get a media evaluation on it. And just emotionally giving small thank you gifts. Like I probably got or found to get the biggest reception out of just getting a few frames blown up and signed off personally and a small bit of merchandise. And I think people got nearly the most value out of, which was a bit of a surprise for me. I just thought it was a small thing that would be nice to do, but people hold so much sentiment on that.
It's massive. It's huge. You know, people actually, a lot of the times when they come to a business deal or a sponsorship deal, it's just about got to make logical sense so they don't get into trouble with partners or, you know, a board. But it's an emotional one as well. And and if they feel like they're actually making a difference as well as getting the business name out there, oh wow, that's it, perfect.
Yeah,
so when you actually do say thank you, it's really rare. You know what I mean? And then you're making sure that you're fulfilling it. But you never know, down the road you might have a discussion with someone who could use their services, and you send them that way, and it's like it's evergreen in that way. So I think paying back is something we've got to do for sponsors, because then they'll come back as well. You know, I'm not saying it selfishly, but you just take it and race and never see them again. So, oh, it didn't work out. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I think if you know the genuine intent is there, naturally and organically, I want to say almost all 18 of them, if not almost all of them, came back and said, "What's the plan for next season? What's the plan for next year?"
So say, no, sorry, I've got some work to do now. I'm too busy for this. Messing about on bikes now. But no, that's great. That worked. Brilliant. Well done for that. So the psychology side of it. Talk us through what you've done first in your work.
Okay. So I'll give you start with the boring bits first and the stats. So far I've invested an enormous amount of time into my education to get the accreditation as a psychologist through Ireland, UK, and I'm based here in the UAE in the Emirates, in Dubai specifically. So studying general psychology, specializing in sports and performance, and then doing a 3-year program through UK BASIS, which is the applied sports specialty, to study and understand human behavior in a sporting context. And a lot of that overlaps into the military defense side as well, which a lot of the research stems from, as well as the corporate setting. But taking my passion for motorsport and putting that into that context as well has really allowed me now to specifically study for skills, understanding behavior, particularly in a motorsport context, which really is, I believe, one of the most cognitively demanding and physically demanding sports that there is out there.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my training and education side. Also outside of that, I've been competing and performing at an elite level in off-road motorsport discipline of rally raid. So people may be familiar with the Dakar Rally, which I believe is one of the biggest tests of man and machine combined together for endurance, for fatigue, and just ultimately one of the most brutal things I believe can be done in a motorsport specific context. This year it was based in Saudi Arabia, over 9,000 kilometers we had to race and travel over a period of 14 days. Just to put that into perspective, that's like riding a motorcycle or a car directly from London all the way to Cape Town in South Africa.
Yep.
So we did that race at times up to 100 miles per hour. You're racing, you're processing it. And I know there's probably a lot of racers out there thinking 100 miles an hour is nothing. When you're on a motorcycle, quite vulnerable. And you're also navigating at the same time as well. So
but it's not just that, it's not a motorway, is it?
No, yeah. So it's not predictable. And that turn you're heading up to now is not the same turn that you did at turn 3 or turn 4 on the track 100 times or 1,000 times in the sim before. It's completely new. It's completely unique. Yeah. You can only really have half an idea of what's coming in front of you. So you're also processing the navigation side of it as well, which I'll touch on with the psychology a little bit later. But you're processing an enormous amount of information, and you're trying to develop strategies as well to be efficient in that. So not to overwhelm yourself with some of the stimulus that's present, but also understanding where your limitations are, where you're going to reach a level of fatigue, where your brain's going to start slowing down. And there's an enormous amount of techniques that have been developed to enhance that and to help with that as well, which we can touch on and support. But for me personally, I had, I guess, a unique combination of competing at that level and understanding the science behind mental or cognitive human performance in a very in-depth level. So I took a lot of learnings with that and applied it to my preparation. And then the actual event was a completely different story. Like a lot of these things, you can prepare all you want, you can plan all you want, until you're in the thick of it. It's a different story completely.
Yeah, because I guess you're on the bike for what, up to 10 hours a day?
Some days over 16 hours. So to put that in a data context, some days you're burning between 5,000 all the way up to 9,000 calories. So if you think how many Big Mac meals that is, or how many pizzas that is, not that we're eating that, fueling correctly is equally important, and working with a performance coach to understand all that. But you're burning an enormous amount of calorie intake, and you're on the bike for an enormous amount of time, or similarly in a car. So preparing for that takes years of proper training. I had the privilege of working with the Tour de France endurance coach, and I think that's enormously important for motorsport as well. It's not just to look at motorsport with a closed lens, it's to understand, okay, what are the best practices in some other sports that can share learnings, that can share techniques. You'd be surprised what is relevant in golf or snooker that can also be implemented, and successes that can be taken from those sports and then applied directly into the context of motorsport as well. Motorsport is beginning or becoming more popular in terms of hard applied study and research, but we're still learning so much about it, and just the speed in which you have to perform and speed in which you process information, and we're beginning to learn more and more about and techniques to optimize that.
Yep, that's brilliant. That's the journey that I really want to work with you on, because it is obviously it's where my work goes now, mostly when you're doing mental fitness training, but to go deeper like you are is really valuable. And to create your own, well, it's not your own science, it's nothing new, but it's your way of doing it sounds really good. So yeah, so when you're on the bike for that long, obviously mental endurance is big, but what was give us an insight of some of the real world problems you had whilst you were out there?
Being very honest with you, Enzo, confidence was the biggest thing I struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
And how I built my confidence, the confidence level I have had coming into the event, and the roller coaster ride of confidence throughout the event. And the first day, I enormously struggled with the technical element of it. My confidence was honestly probably at an all-time low for years. I can remember before that. I went into this thinking I'd studied the mental side. I'd worked with some of the top people in the world for the human performance side. The technical side was something that I'd really ticked all the boxes on. But until I was in the thick of it, I really didn't understand the challenge of it specifically. I think almost 10% of the race was out on the first day. So if you think of a 14-day race, 10% being lost on the first day, and to put it into perspective, I think under 45% of people finished. So just to finish is such an achievement, and was such a focus of mine. But on the first day, confidence absolutely shattered. I remember being in tears crossing the finish line thinking, how on earth am I going to finish another 13 days of it? And just the thought of thinking there's 13 days left of this. I was in pain, I was suffering, I'd picked up some minor injuries, and I'd seen one of my teammates was unable to finish today due to injury, and seen multiple bikes being evacuated from the race route or race zone. I spent an enormous amount of time then using skills like self-talk and understanding what sources of motivation had brought me there, and had really analyzed that. So when you finish the off-road stage in the rally raid or at Dakar, there's usually a road section back to the camp, and the camp is like a traveling circus that travels from camp to camp, hundreds of kilometers every day. So that road section back, I think from memory, was about an hour and a half, and I really did an enormous amount of reflection on that section, thinking, okay, why am I here? How can I break this down into an achievable task? Thinking I had 13 days left was just anxiety riddling. I had to break it down into really small consumable tasks, thinking, okay, just need to get back to the camp. And then a huge element of that is which I'll touch on in a sec, is just understanding, okay, I need to get back to camp, I need to get dinner, and I need to get up tomorrow morning and try and put myself in a position to go again.
Yep. What was it like the second day? Can you remember? Was it as bad as you thought or not?
So a key moment when I got back to the camp was, first of all, being received by my team. Very fortunate to have awesome mechanic there. Also very fortunate to have my father there as well. So having that level of social support, I think, is something that's often so overlooked.
Yeah.
Being able to communicate with them, being able to share how I felt, and then also just gaining awareness of what everyone else was thinking and feeling. That night I got back, I understood my other teammate had actually been evacuated from the. He was okay. It wasn't a serious injury. He had been evacuated from the race, and I saw my other teammate when he came in, and I could see it in his eyes, the struggle he had, and this was his third Dakar. And then when I got to the cafeteria, the canteen area where you're basically served airplane food at its best, I saw some of the other guys that have won multiple Dakars and a lot of top 5 podium finishers. I could see it in their eyes, how challenged they were by that day. And they say that day is there to make or break you. If you don't get through the first day, you're really not supposed to be there. So then I was beginning to build a bit more confidence and being aware of the situation as well, thinking, okay, I'm not the only one here. There was a bit of safety in the awareness around me, but then also some of the work I'd done myself, maybe we're doing a little bit of psychological support myself on the bike on the way back, or even a bit of therapy or counseling, had really made me, okay, think these things through. What was in my control? What was outside of my control? And what were small actionable tasks I could take to put me in a good position going to bed that night, and hopefully put me in a good position waking up and finding some motivation to get back on the bike and give this a go.
And I think the brain does, it adjusts to a new normal. This is base camp, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I am now. Yesterday it was here, and I was worried about all sorts of things, but now it's here, and I'm actually expecting it to be worse than it is. And it goes, oh, right, it's not that bad. I think the brain works like it all the time. Going from a warm body from the gym into cold shower.
Yeah.
Now, hang on a minute. I'll set it to number 2. I'm always okay in number 2. Oh, yeah, I'm hotter now, though. So it's just the adjustment, right? And I think it's even before a driver gets in the car, some of them do a hand-eye coordination to speed things up. There's all sorts of technology now that makes you really quick-minded. And if you were to get straight in the car, then the car seems like it's driving a bit slow because I've just sped my mind up. You know what I mean? Same thing, base normal, and then but it adjusts ever so quick back down to this again now, right?
100%. And it's all about, I think as well, finding something that works for you. Just because you see a Formula 1 driver doing that exercise with the balls, try it, experience it. If it's for you, go all in on it. If it's not, find something that works for you. And I think a lot of times when I'm working with athletes, not just in motorsport, but other sporting disciplines, they have a role model or an idea that, I want to be this tennis player or this golfer or this motorsport or Formula 1 athlete. Yeah. And they look at replicating some of the activities they're doing, but we are so different as people. And we can take learnings and learn about specific skills or learn about specific techniques, but it's really important to remember everyone has so many individual differences when we're inclined to certain techniques or certain elements to work better for each individual person.
Exactly. I can have a driver meditating before going out or listening to thrash metal. Yeah. Depends where it's where their base camp is, right? And what they need to get to be just right on the bell curve. And each person's kind of different. It takes time to learn that as well with somebody. You can go too far sometimes. I remember with Liam, we wired him up that much. He drove off on the first lap, into the gravel. And it's like, okay, we'll taper it back a bit. Yeah.
One of the specific skills I use, and I read about, I'll have to find a theory to link it back to the technique, is sometimes we can be so incredibly tough on ourselves. And I think that's quite common in motorsport. People have high standards, people have high ambitions, and, they beat themselves up and say like, oh, Oran, why didn't you get the fast lap or quickest lap there? Or Oran, why did you miss the apex on that turn? Or why were you not operating at the best of your level? A technique that I found quite helpful sharing with clients and athletes, and a technique that I used on that bike on the way back, was instead of looking at yourself and beating yourself up and thinking you should have done this, you could have done that, you should have done this, treat yourself as if you're one of your close friends or one of your best friends. If you were in that situation, Enzo, and you'd really struggled on the first day, I wouldn't be saying, oh, you should have done this and you could have done that and you could have done more training for this technical element and you should have better prepared. I'll be going, no. How you're feeling is completely fine. You're under a lot of pressure, and trying to bring that level of compassion and kindness into my communication to you, which would have been my self-talk back to myself, and trying to make myself feel comfortable, trying to help myself recover, understanding that I was in a heightened emotional state, trying to maybe reduce that emotion through that specific technique. So if there's someone watching this as one key takeaway that they want to try and bring into their practice, I recommend experimenting with that.
Yeah, it's very good because the brain will be at ease. And it's kind of like trying to, you'll know this with the fore and the hindbrain and how they crash against each other. When it's all conscious learning, judgment, thoughts, it's all up here, right? And I think when you calm that down and it sort of just goes, oh, okay. Then, oh, perfect. There we go. Now we can start to go again. So I think it's bringing that back again and taking away all that noise, right? Of self-judgment is massively noisy as well.
Hugely, yeah.
It's nearly like fight or flight when you start to think of this. It's the primal, and it's just not. It doesn't help. It's really good when you really want to structure something. And when you're doing a training program, it can be very negative. Like I said before, you're focusing on all the areas you need to do well. It can be quite good in that because, like, right, where did I actually suck? Post. Yeah. This is normally post. Because I know my strengths are good, but I got to bring these weaknesses up because it is a one-man band, right? When you're a race driver, you got to do everything. It's not you can't just give it to someone else to do it for you. So I think it's healthy on that side because you're hunting for the next bit you can improve on. But when you're in it and you've got that voice, it's going to start beating you up. That's not helpful in any way, I don't think.
Big time, yeah. There's exactly as you said. It's not something you want to completely eradicate. There's a time and a place for it. When you're doing a review or you're doing a strategy session or a development session where you're looking at what can I take into this next race or what can I take into my training and preparation for next week, that's the time and place for it. If you've had a bad qualifying and you're trying to bring yourself into a good position for the next qualifying or the next free practice or whatever it is, then's not the time. Yeah. But a lot of this, if you practice it, it's a bit like from the mental fitness side, it's a bit like doing press ups if you're doing it and training it when you're in the sim work, when you're doing tests, when it comes to qualifying, when it comes to practice, and then it comes to race, they're going to be very familiar techniques, which is something I struggle with. I practiced certain elements I knew I was going to be good at, but some of the things I needed that I wasn't good at, there was definitely an opportunity for growth there.
Yeah, did you fall off a lot and stuff and have to get back up when you're absolutely exhausted? And
oh yeah, so this just gives you an idea of context to that. About 2 or 3 years ago in this discipline, the sport, they implemented an airbag device that goes off a little bit like a car airbag that just inflates around your torso and your neck. Yeah. And previously, I might have had 1 or 2 incidents or accidents where I come off the bike at over 100 kilometers per hour, so that's 60 something miles per hour. Yep. So to Dakar, I thought, okay, I'll over prepare for this. I'll bring 8 of these canisters just in case. On the first day, I had gone through all those 8. And I had 30 more days.
That was day one?
That was day one. I had to go. Very lucky to use some of the best safety equipment available with Alpinestar. Yeah. And go to the Alpinestar's guy at the bivouac at the camp that night and put a small deposit down on a few more.
I think you do need a few more. That's hilarious. So it's like, oh God, I'm down to 2 now, and then you go and use them. Brilliant. Yeah, that's not the best start, is it? But it's as you say, that was a brutal day. Get through.
One other thing I just wanted to add to the explanation you were using of the Navy SEALs. A lot of training from sports and performance psychology has been stemmed from the defense or from the military research and background. Like there's a phenomenon called quiet eye training, which is studying of perceptual cognitive skills of where eyes move. And if you were to look at it in a sim racing medium or sim racing environment, if you were to bring me, who would be a very novice sim racer on closed circuit racing, the level of movement within my eyes to study a corner, to understand where the apex is enormously more than someone who's a lot more proficient if they're racing Formula 4 or even high-level go-karting. And being able to train that and study that, and then retrospectively try and bring that into training by mitigating it and playing around with factors of exposure, can be incredible skills to develop and helped dramatically increase the rate of development when you're looking at sim racing specifically. It's like a very amazing feature that we can use in motorsport, that we can bring such a controlled environment into something so similar, and very similar brain processes go on when someone's sim racing compared to real racing. And then if you look at other skills, if you don't have access to sim racing, like mental imagery and visualization, incredibly powerful tools. If someone's hooked up to a sim, or someone's hooked up to MRI technology or brain scanning technology while they're racing, and then in a simulator and in visualization, the three are very similar.
One thing I do and have seen with everything in life, when you're learning, just like what you said about vision, you are trying to see too much and trying to paint the picture and color it all in. And it's a lot of information going in. But when you get good at something, you do it more often, you chunk that information down. You erase a lot of it that's not needed. You focus on what's actually got to be done, and straight away that makes it streamlined as well. So there's quite a bit to this. It's trying to get somebody to that processing speed, if you like, or hierarchy on what they're focusing on.
And developing these efficiencies.
So when you come into a corner, okay, a novice will think, I've got to brake at the 100-meter board, for example. If we're giving them that as a braking reference, I've got to get the car straight. Sorry, I've got to brake there. I've got to hit this brake shape, which is like a really hard hit on the brake when you're looking at the data, and it comes down into the apex. Oh, I've got a downshift. Damn it. So it's a lot, right? And their eyes are all over the place. When you speak to someone who's really good at that corner and they're in their 5th year, whatever, you ask them, how did you get that? How did you do that corner so deep? Explain to me so I can go and do it myself. Just brake as late as you can, so you think you're going to die and turn. That's it. It's like, okay, all right, I'll do that then. So it is quite funny.
And I think that there's a bit of a gap there. Just point I want to touch on. Just because someone's extremely good at doing something doesn't necessarily mean they're extremely good at coaching it, or extremely good at explaining. If they've spent a decade fine tuning that technique, them trying to explain what they're doing, or their experience of it to a novice, is like explaining something in a different language sometimes. The contextual understanding of them doing it at that elite level, or a very efficient level, compared to a novice trying to understand and learn how to get there, the learning steps can sometimes be not helpful at all.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And it just shows that you do. It's like walking now, right? If you just walk. But I can't really tell you how I walk. I think I shift my weight to the left, and then so yeah, there's all that. But yeah. Okay, so anything else from the journey that you were on the bike, that taught us or taught you that you could teach us on the mental side? Important lessons that like stick with you forever, like I had to learn to deal with it.
There's a few here. One thing that I want to touch on that was probably quite important to the lead up to the race and to the race itself. Like, I really got, even if I never went and competed at Dakar, the preparation and experience I got as a motorsport athlete in preparing for it was huge. But one thing, Michael Gervais, who's a world leading performance psychologist, he's worked in NFL with a lot of Red Bull athletes through a vast array of disciplines, but done a good bit of work in motorsport as well, is FOPO. So the fear of people's opinions, which I think can be one of the most limiting beliefs and probably limiting factors in order for people to achieve not just their full potential, but their full life potential, whether it's in motorsport, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business or something else. That fear, and I think being able to work on that fear and being able to manage and hopefully mitigate that fear, I think is one of the biggest challenges I faced in preparing for Dakar and being at the Dakar itself. But have been able to work on, and have I completed it? Absolutely not. I feel like it's something that needs continuous work and continuous effort.
Of course. I mean, just think about one of the biggest, most important values we've got as human beings is love.
Mm.
Another one, significance. Them two, oh my goodness. If they're usually in the top three, by the way, them two. And if you take that personality values, they are needs. If you take a look at them and think, what does that mean? What do I have to feel or experience, sorry, in order to feel significance? Usually it's, oh, what someone tells me, or the way make people, I feel like when I'm walking in a room or something in the industry, I need to, so you're worried about people's opinions then, because you need that to say if you're hitting significance or not, or their reactions.
That validation.
Love, yeah, and love is another one. You know, if we're not, I think love is number one actually. By the way, how do I know when I'm getting that? Oh, people tell me, people show me. So it's like it's a need that somehow is programmed. So then to ignore it, it's you can't. I think you have to reframe it. And you reframe it obviously through looking at other people that you admire. They've got just as much haters as they have people that admire them, right? In fact, they have to go through the hate period probably until then they crack, and then, oh, actually, this person's actually really good or whatever. So I think it's just part of it, but it is such a shame that is so, it's so important. And I think even at school, you know, if you stand out, you get chastised for it, you get into trouble for it. If you do something that you shouldn't have behavior-wise, you get scolded for it. It's kind of taught to us as well. Fit in, wear the uniform,
conform,
be judged, be cool. It's big. And obviously, the way we live now, we've got everyone else's lives on our phone.
Yeah.
It'd be even worse. So if someone's got an opinion of you, they can tell you straight away.
And there's no accountability for it. You can have whatever username or whatever troll or whatever comments. So yeah, I think as we develop and as we support motorsport athletes, social media is probably something we could discuss on another call for another hour.
But that's just human behavior. It's not social media's fault. It's us. It's natural. It's the way we are. It was the same with media in a way, but only a few people had the power to put letters down.
To do it, yeah.
And they say fake news, but come on. We know we've had fake news before fake news was invented, right? So I think social media does get a bad rap, but it's just us that are putting the stuff on there. So we got to look at ourselves really, but it is just human behavior.
Yeah, and it's ultimately a tool that can be used mega effectively, and there's also a negative stuff, unfortunately.
That's right, buddy. So what kind of thoughts crept in before you went out, before you even started it on that side? Fear of other people's opinions.
Yeah, I think I would have got where I needed to be a lot quicker had I not been so concerned about what's that person going to think, what's this person going to think. I had a very small social media following, and now I suddenly had to start documenting the preparation, the process, everything that's getting involved, dealing with some less than positive comments about people. There's another quote as well. I don't think I heard it from a psychologist or in psychology context, but just I think you'll never be criticized by someone who's doing more than you or someone who's trying more than you.
Yep.
So that really helped me. And then trying to juggle my role and work as a psychologist and trying to understand how I can complement my career as a psychologist through this racing journey. And obviously what I experienced as an athlete, as a racer at Dakar is not directly relevant to everyone. I'm sure, Enzo, if you'd had the exact same experience I'd have, it would have been slightly different. Different things would have worked better for you. You might have felt similar. You might have felt completely different. It could have been complete polar opposites.
Yep.
So that's of value, but it's not of enormous importance. And what I felt doesn't necessarily reflect or isn't replicated by everyone else.
No, I think what we're talking about here is real stuff, mate. Honestly, it's there's always performance on demand and getting through tough times, but thinking about what other people think is huge, and it's stopping people from starting their social media. I don't look good on camera and it sound right and all this. I think we've all had a time when we thought that, and it's sort of made us pause. And it's kind of like, you know, we've all done it. We've criticized people, but we take a snapshot of something, we give our opinion, right? And it could be harsh. If that person actually heard it, you'd be like, oh, I didn't mean it. Sorry, I just...
Yeah.
But we have a snapshot, make an opinion, we move on, right? Don't think about it. But that person, if they see it, if it's a comment or they hear it, they hang on to it and it really hurts. but we don't take the time to walk in their shoes for a bit and say, "All right, that's it." We're just so used to just judging and giving a quick opinion. It's not even personal. And I think once you really realize that, people are just saying stuff, but they don't really care about you, to be fair. It sort of lets it go a little bit and understands that I've done it hundreds of times and then grew to love that person, or thought, oh, right, I didn't realize that was going on. I wouldn't have said it otherwise. So I think it's, as long as you see it from that way and think, oh, that person's sad, they just left that comment, or they're going through stuff and they've just taken a snapshot and given, a rightful comment because it looks like that from their angle.
Yeah.
It can't really, it has less weight. Sorry. I'm not going to say it doesn't harm you, but it has less weight and you just carry on. So
yeah, when you can understand
parents. So even if you do value their opinion, they might not get what you're trying to do. So they're going to judge because, again, they're seeing it through their spectacles, right?
Yeah.
Their mental model has painted it a certain way. So they're seeing it from that, where really it's this that's going on. So they're going to judge. So I think you've got to, even the people you respect, you've got to kind of like understand their opinion, but all right, yeah, I can see how you're seeing it, but it's not.
Yeah, they're looking at it from a different set of circumstances or a different factor. And
I think perspective is everything. And you know this. It's your mental model, the way it may. I like to refer it really as it's translating external to internal.
Yeah.
And I think if you become really good at translating that in a diluted way sometimes, it helps. So it's like, okay, I've just got my 17th failure or no, should I say, from a sponsor that I've gone to. The translation process of that situation is really important. Is it the end? I'm not good enough. Or is it, okay, I just need to try a different tact.
And am I one step to finding that main title sponsor?
Yeah, same with everything. Okay, I've just fallen off the bike. Is it that mean that I'm just not good enough? Or can I see how quick I can get back into the rhythm?
And then having that fixed mindset or growth mindset is, it all stems from that, how you're looking at through different lenses. But you're so right. If a certain situation happens, your perspective on what happened, my perspective on what happened are so heavily influenced by who we are, what we've experienced in life, what we think could be happening. So important for people to gain awareness about that and try and better understand that just because someone feels like that about a certain situation doesn't necessarily mean they're correct about it, or doesn't necessarily mean you're correct about it. But you just need to sometimes take it for what it is and continue on and begin focusing, if it's a negative situation, on the next thing.
What helps me is if you give all comments less weight. So even the good ones.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you did really well. Like, oh, thanks for that. Thanks. Delete.
Yeah.
It's weird. I know it's twisted, but it helps. It's like if someone says a really good win, yeah. I think it's like a really bad loser, someone who, when they lose, not when they lose, but when they get beaten, someone finishes a race quicker than them, boohoo. But someone, they're referred to as being beaten, they panic, they start to stress, start to blame the team, they don't love their sport anymore. I bet you that person is the kind of person that over celebrates when they win. So it's like this, right? When I win, I'm up here. When I lose, I'm down there. How about being a little bit more? It's impossible, but in a bit more like this. So you win, you're like, yeah, whatever. You lose, whatever. That, I think, would be an AI robot, right?
Something I think we could strive for.
Exactly.
Challenging to achieve. But with that, Enzo, that I think stems a lot from motivation as well. Like if we're very intrinsically motivated, and I went through this and did a lot of work on this. If you're intrinsically if you're fueled by a lot of intrinsic factors, I think your road's going to be a lot more smooth. If you're motivated by a lot more external factors, a lot of which sometimes can be far outside your control, that's going to be a roller coaster of an experience through the highs and through the lows.
Carters really struggle with this because they've got parents' expectations. Some of them might not even be there under their own passion for the sport. It might be their parents' passion, so they just go along with it because they, pleasing the dad or the mom or whatever. It's big. They really stress massive confidence issues as well, because I'm not winning, I'm not good enough. And it's like when you go to a karting, I think karting, you can learn even more about psychology, to be fair. They're in such a great age where you can mold it a bit better as well.
You've got the mental years,
It's less filtered, and you can see it. They haven't had years of hiding their emotions.
Yeah.
There's tears everywhere. There's parents fighting. It's amazing. But when you see it, you can kind of understand where it all comes from, and it is like a big playground. They go from the playground from the school, and the racetracks like that as well. So you got the bully, you've got the shy kid, you got the one they take the mick out of. So it's all the same sort of thing. It is in the workplace as well. But you just see it all unfold in a very competitive environment. And it is fascinating. You could write a book on that, I think, just by going for one weekend.
Yeah, huge opportunity to support. And with that, I think when you're working with young drivers, often a lot of the challenges are maybe could be described as maladaptive behavior are stemmed or rooted in maybe issues that are not happening on the racetrack. Maybe they're being projected on there, but they could be issues that are happening through maybe experiences or support that could be conducted a little bit better or in different manners by parents, other support figures. So important to evaluate the whole holistic circle of what relationships are and how they can be supportive, and then often how you can maybe make suggestions or small changes for things to be looked at in a different manner or things to be communicated in a different way.
Yeah, that's it. So have you got anything that you want to touch upon today that would be quite valuable, or just to get off your chest, or anything for us to dig into a little bit, just to finish off with?
So I'm trained in certain different techniques. As I discussed before, there's a model that I use when I'm working with one-on-one clients or one-on-one athletes, of like an intake process, a needs analysis, case formulation, developing an intervention. And during that case formulation, you're relying on your experience, but also relying on trying to tie in some literature, some theory and everything else. And some theory that was developed in the 1980s or 1990s can sometimes not be that relevant as well. So sometimes you have to take things with a pinch of salt, but trying to underpin it somewhere sometimes helps with the opportunity for success. But with this, and I think when you're dealing with anything from the mental side, you know better than me, you're never guaranteed a success, but you can look at the factors that are in your control and then try and work on those and putting you in a better position to be successful. Then there's the rollout of the intervention and whatever you're looking to try and do, but ultimately trying to develop a different behavior through different thought patterns and try and drive change through that, through the methods that we're using. So I've previously, and I've been trained in CBT and REBT. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy and rational emotive behavioral therapy. And then I'm learning and working on trying to implement motivational interviewing, which is an incredible technique and style. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. Through helping people influence better thoughts and better behaviors. And a lot of it is just active listening. There's an enormous amount of power and support that can be provided just by listening to someone. You actually don't have to provide any solutions or provide any of the problems that the world needs. But just by listening to a client or listening to an athlete can have enormous power, especially if they're in situations where they might not feel like they're being heard, or they maybe feel like what they're saying is being judged or overly judged by other people's opinions. But it comes back to that and allows them then to if you want to look at it as, we're not the experts. Enzo, you and I, when we're working with a client or working with an athlete, the client is the expert on their own lives. And we're just there to make suggestions and to bring in maybe different techniques or skills they could be developing or using that can be brought in to their lifestyle and brought in to bring that behavioral change intrinsically through them.
Yeah, I like that, because I say it a lot recently. I think over the last couple of years, I've been, I think virtually every driver's heard me say it. You already know how to work the brain. You've been driving it for 16 years, 30 years, depending on their age, right? So you are an expert. So some of these techniques I'll teach them, some of the training or strategies, should we say, they seem too easy and simple, right? And you're thinking, well, it can't be that easy just to change my emotion. But actually it is. It's just because you've done it forever. You are already a good hand at controlling the brain. So we just got to do it this way. And I think that's a big lesson. They are the experts. We just got to say, right, just try doing this. see if this works. And it
Yeah.
is as simple as that. And listening, like you say, so they can kind of work it out as they're talking to you as well.
And it's, I think, where we provide support, I always feel like we work for the athlete, or we work for the racing driver, or the driver team in supporting them. We often, if you look at what you read in a book, or you look at maybe one of your videos, or look at a theory, or look at, okay, I'm supposed to be implementing this. Sometimes it can be very difficult to drive that behavior. And I think that's where we come in to support and to guide, and to maybe offer slight personal, specific directions, or maybe slight actionable items that might individual wouldn't pick up in a video, or wouldn't pick up in something else. And I think that's where we bridge the gap between a solution or a desired behavior, and how that can actually happen, and how that can actually roll out, and maybe small steps that can be taken to work in that specific direction.
All right, man. Give us a leaving thought for our drivers.
I'd say, just to drive home the FOPO, the fear of people's opinions, that I should have left out of the closing thought, but just how limiting that can be for you in your race career, for you in your personal life, for you in your career in business, or whatever industry you choose to go into. I think the sooner you can begin to work on that, or identify that, and begin on developing some of the skills used to harness that, I think would benefit, I think, most people quite greatly.
I don't think people realize just how much they're filtering through that first before they take an action or say something. You know, rightfully so. We don't want to upset people, but when it prevents you from going all out or taking action, that's when it hurts. So I think you're right. It's big. It sounds like it's quite an obvious thing to talk about, but if they could just have a mental diary, I can assure you it's once every couple of minutes they're thinking, how does this look from the outside? If they're doing something active out there, obviously it keeps going there to hold it in line. It's a very natural thing. So I think, yeah, it's big. And I think that's something that we can all work on and remind ourselves each day, each minute.
Definitely. Yeah. It's due weekly or daily.
Yeah, it is. Good, man. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having this little sit down, and just us opening up our minds and talking about things we've been through, and what our passions are. I think it'd be really valuable to people.
No, thank you, Enzo. Yeah, it was great to have such a I think a lot more in-depth chat, and all the different subjects and the different ideas. I really enjoyed that. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.